Okay, so in this tutorial we're going to be creating a PHP login integration. What I mean by this is if we were to log in here with some login credentials, let me just show you. Clicking login, that's logged me in. Now this user account is actually a user account that's based on my phpBB forum. This is my user here. So what essentially I have done is installed a forum, then created a login script externally that allows me to log in with the same username and password that I've registered inside my phpBB database. Now obviously this is just a database I've set up for the purpose of this tutorial. A note that we have a database here called phpBB. I've named it phpBB, and inside we have all the relevant tables associated with a phpBB setup. The one we're going to be looking at, the only one we're going to be looking at for the purpose of this, is phpBB_users. Now your tables may not be called phpBB_. That's just a prefix that I have set. I think it's the default prefix. But obviously whatever your table or database tables or database are called, you can just work with that and change that for the purpose of this tutorial. So our code is inside here. We've got three main files. We've got the login page. This is the entire login here. We've got the form at the bottom. It's going to be a self submitting PHP script, or form rather. We've got our main, which shows if the user's logged in. This is a pretty simple bit of code, and then we've got just a logout page. So it's functioning as a login would, but we're taking usernames and passwords from our phpBB database. So I'm just going to pause the video, blank these, and we're going to start coding. Okay, so I've blanked these files. If we go into our page here, we refresh, you can see we've got nothing. So we're basically starting from scratch. Now, just a bit of directory structure advice. Inside the folder where I have my three files, you can see opening context, I've got the folder called forum. Now obviously you can call this anything you like, but you need to know the directory name. And we click and we've just got our files for our phpBB setup directly inside this folder. So just make a note when you're following this tutorial, keep track of your directory structure, because mine is going to be different to yours, most likely. Okay, so let's jump straight back into context. Now the first thing we're going to do is obviously open our PHP tags. We are going to do a few setups. Now we're going to be using the header function in PHP. So what we need to do is we need to use our ob_start command to let us use this if there is output before this command, because you will receive an error if you have HTML or string output before this command. We also need to set up our sessions. Obviously we're going to be using logins. You can use cookies, you're welcome to use cookies. I'm going to be using sessions for the purpose of this tutorial. And we need to connect to our database, so obviously this is quite important. And obviously this is what you need to take into account when connecting to your own database. So we're going to say MySQL connect, and we're using three parameters. First one is the host, so localhost. Root is my username I'm using, and I don't have a password for this as it's local. And then we're saying MySQL select database, so select DB. And obviously let's jump straight back into my PHP MyAdmin. We're going to come up and we're going to see that the database is called phpBB. I've named that and installed it into that database. So we can just call this phpBB. And then I'm just going to set up, as usual, I set up an error thing, so could not connect to the database. And we're going to use OR and then the die function after this with that error inside it. So if we get any connection problems, then we're going to kill the script, because the script is not going to run without connecting to the database. Okay, so the way this works is we need to open a file inside our phpBB setup. So if we go open, you can see here I've got the forum folder. I'm going to click on that, and inside includes we have a file called functions.php. Now functions.php is obviously everything you're going to, all the functions that are going to be sort of included inside phpBB, they're going to use these functions. So you know, we need to include this. I mean, I didn't just know this off by heart. You need to have a little research through these files to see how we're going to take the login process into consideration. First of all, I want to point out that inside the database, if we were to scroll through, remember we're inside the phpBB underscore users table. If I was to scroll along, you can see my username and username clean here. That's my username. Username clean, just a word of warning, is a lowercase version of the username. So if you were to create a username with a capital A here, it would be displayed with a capital A here, and username clean would be a small. In my case, it's just Alex in all lowercase, so this doesn't matter. But we're going to be using this username clean. That's really, really important that we do that. If we scroll along again, we can see user password. Now looking at this password, it doesn't seem like a method of encryption. It doesn't seem like a password hash we've come across before. In actual fact, this is a self-hashed by phpBB. They have their own encryption algorithm that encrypts passwords and then has a method to decrypt them as well. So we're not using MD5 here. If we were using MD5, it would be a whole lot easier, but we're in fact using their own methods. So we're going to need to find a way to do this, and that's why I suggested we open the phpBB functions.php inside the includes folder. So if we open this and have a look, I'm going to search for, this is how I initially found it, I'm going to search for hash. I'm going to say from the top, I'm going to click find. I'm going to press F3 to find my way down, and you can already start to see we've got a function here which is called phpBB underscore hash, and then we're feeding this is a function, we're feeding this the password parameter. So we're feeding in a password, and then this function inside is going to hash the password. So if we scroll down a bit more, just a word of warning, this hash is always going to be different. It hashes the password differently each time. So what's happening here is we can't hash a password that's provided and then compare it to a password already in the database. That's not going to work. So if we come down, we can see here that we've got a function called phpBB underscore check underscore hash, and we've got two parameters here. We've got password and then a hash. So presumably this function is going to take a plain text password, and it's going to take a password hash, and it's going to compare them. So really we've got an easy ride. This function is going to do everything we need already. We don't need to sort of mess around with anything else. This is going to do it for us. So we've got a function that's pretty easy to use already. So what we need to do is obviously include this functions.php inside our login.php script. So I'm going to say include functions.php phpBB functions php. Okay, so we've included that script, or rather commented to include it. What I'm basically going to do is say include forum includes functions.php. We could even say require because it is required. Okay, so we've got this script in here. Now we're going to test this just to see if it's included. So we're going to run this page here. Let's just refresh. Right, okay, so failed to open stream. Let's have a look here. Maybe get rid of that leading starting slash. Okay, yeah, so that was my fault, directory structure fault. Okay, so we have included that. Presumably it's been included successfully, but what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to echo out just output, just to test. Now if I come back to this page and refresh, now surely we're expecting to see this output here, and we don't have an error for this, so this has been included correctly. So why isn't this being output? I mean, we can refresh all we like. Now this is a problem I came across, and it took me quite a while to figure out why. And the reason being is if we scroll up to the top of this page, we've got a function, or rather an if statement here, with this defined in phpBB thing. So if it's not defined in phpBB, then we're exiting the script. So this is pretty self-explanatory. It's basically saying if it hasn't been defined within phpBB itself, then terminate the script. We're exiting this page. So what we need to do is we need to use block commenting. If you don't know how to block comment, it's a /* and then a star and a / to end. We've commented this out. So now what we're going to do is, presumably this script, now that we've included, says it can be included anywhere. It doesn't have to be included in phpBB, and then we are going to get this output. So let's refresh, and we have our output. So it's just things like that you need to take into consideration and have a look for if you're debugging, if you're having any problems, any errors. You just need to have a look for things like this, because they do crop up now and then, and you can spend hours trying to get your head around it when it's actually a relatively simple thing to fix. Okay, so we can continue from this. Our output is working. Obviously what we need to do now is come down and create our form. So this is just going to be the form to log in. Like I said, we're going to say the action is going to go to the same page, so it's a self-submitting script, and we're going to use post because we're submitting password and username data. Okay, so I'm just going to set up a basic script, nothing special, obviously not taking design into consideration. I'll leave that up to you. So we've got input type equals name equals. So the type for this is going to be text, and the name for this is just going to be username, and we can paragraph down. We've got password, break down to a input type, that's going to be called password, and obviously the type is going to be password, so we get the stars that star it out. Another paragraph break, an input type, submit button, the name we're going to call login, so we can check if it's been pressed later, and the value of it, I'm just going to say login. That's what's displayed to the user. Okay, so if we refresh our page, we can see that we've got our username and password up here. We can type whatever we like into here. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to check inside our PHP script if this has been submitted. If it has, we're going to run this block here inside curly brackets, and that's $_post login. Remember, you know how to use the post variable, and login is the name of the button. Presuming that it has been pressed, this data will be forwarded back to this page. Okay, so what we need to do is now get the form data. So I'm going to say username equals $_post username, and we have the password, and that's $_post. Need to really slow down. Yeah, I do need to slow down. And that's password. Now we're obviously going to take a few security issues into consideration here. We're going to use the add slashes and the strip tags strip tags first. So it's strip_tags. Basically what this does is it strips any HTML data that could be of a threat to your script, to your database, and it strips that straight out of it. So it's strip_tags, and then we're just enclosing this in rounded brackets. And we're also going to use the add slashes. There's no underscore this time. Remember to enclose that whole thing in brackets, so we basically have a function inside a function. What this does is it adds slashes where I believe it's just inverted commas, so apostrophes. It adds a slash to them, so things like SQL injection are I'm not sure if it's impossible, but much harder to execute SQL injection. Now the other thing we need to do is, remember I said earlier when we were looking inside our database, we have a username clean row. This is a lowercase version. Now obviously if you have a lowercase version inside the database, the best thing to do would be to come back to here and say str to lower to create a lowercase version of the submitted username so we can check it to the lowercase version of the stored username. It just makes things a lot better, and we're going to be able to match a username a lot more easily. If you've got something like this inside a database, it really helps when you're using sort of validation to check if the users first of all in the database, and then select records via that user record. Okay, so that's pretty much done. We've got our security set up, we've got our username and password posted. We're going to shove a bit of validation in here. I'm just going to say if username doesn't exist or password doesn't exist, I'm just going to echo out to the user, please enter a username and password, and I'm going to put a paragraph break just for display purpose. Otherwise, we're going to start up a block with curly brackets, and the rest of the code is going to be in here. So first of all, they have to have entered a username and password. Now what we're going to do is find the username. So we're going to check that the user does exist first of all. And I'm going to set up a variable called find, and that's going to be MySQL query. So we're setting up a query to search for this username, and I'm going to say select star from phpBB underscore users, where username clean, not just username, equals username. So if you didn't understand before why we've used this str to lower, this posted could be in capitals. What the script has now done is converted it to lowercase, and then it's checking the lowercase version inside the database. So nothing really can go wrong here. Okay, so now what we're doing, obviously, to find the username, if this has returned a result, that means the username has been found. If it hasn't returned a result, then what we're going to do is we're going to check for that. So we're going to say MySQL num rows. So if MySQL num rows of find equals 0, remember the double equals, it's the comparison operator, then we're going to say username not found. Basically what this does is, if this, like I said before, if this has returned a row, then it's going to be bigger than 0. If it doesn't return a row, it's going to be equal to 0. So we're checking if no rows are returned, then presumably we don't have a user in that database. So otherwise, if the user does exist, we're going to use a while loop. You don't have to use a while loop, you can do it otherwise, but I'm going to be using a while loop. We're going to be using a while loop to basically check the password hash inside the database, just to retrieve that data. That's all we need to do. So I'm going to say while find row equals MySQL fetch associative array. I'm sure you've seen this before. If not, you know, have a look at my other tutorials. And we're using the find query there. And obviously we're going to open up some curly brackets. We don't actually need to, but I'm going to be using comments inside here. We're going to grab password hash for user, and this is going to, I'm just basically going to call it password hash. Be careful when you're naming these, don't just call it password, because obviously we've already got a password variable up here. Password hash equals find row, remember we're using find row here, the same as this, and that is, now let's look inside the database, user underscore password. So we can come back here, say user underscore password. So presumably what that has done now is, this area is going to be for the rest of our code. Presumably what this has done is grabbed the user's password. What you can do is just along the way test things. So we're going to say echo password hash. This is basically going to give us a little idea of how our script is running so far. Obviously I haven't checked things along the way. I tend to do that nowadays. Right, let's refresh just to check we haven't got any immediate errors. No, we haven't. Okay, so I'm going to type a completely, you know, rubbish name into here, nothing to do with it, and a silly, well no, we'll leave the password out. Let's click login. Please enter a username and password. So we've got that validation up and working. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to type a username that doesn't exist and a password, and we have username not found. Let's just come in here. I know this is being picky. I'm just going to say paragraph break on there just to even that out. Okay, so now I'm going to type Alex, and I'm going to type a wrong password in. Okay, so my password hash has been echoed. We have no nothing to compare the passwords at the moment, so therefore we're just echoing out a password hash just to check that everything's working. Okay, so what we're going to do next, if we go down, we can get rid of this echo password hash. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check the password hash using the function inside functions.php that we included up here. So if we go to functions.php, I'm going to again search for, I know the name of the function, so I'm just going to search for it. It's phpBB _check _hash, and here it is. We can directly use this function now because we've included it inside this login script. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable called check, and that is going to be phpBB _check _hash. And obviously now we've got our password that's been submitted, and we've got our password hash. Remember I said inside here we've got the password here, which is the plain text password, and the hash here, which is obviously the password hash. So password, comma, password, hash. Now obviously this is the password that's been submitted. If we see here, we've got password, and then password hash here is the password hash that we've just found from that row in the database, or that record in the database. So how are we going to check if this has returned saying that the password is correct? The reason being is because this returns a true or false value. So it's very easy to check now. We can check it by just saying if check equals true. What I'm going to do is say equals false for now, because I'm going to put the error before what we're doing. So if it does equal false, then we're going to say echo incorrect password, and then I'm going to say else if check equals true, execute some code. Now the reason I've used an else if and then done another comparison here with an equals comparison operator is because if for some reason check does equal anything else than false, then we're going to still let the user in. We want check to return as true. Now if this returns an error, for example, if this function returns an error, we're still going to be logging the user in. So we need to use else if check equals true. So we're basically doing another check, but using an else as well. So presuming that they have logged in and the check for the password is true using this function here, phpBB check hash, then we're going to log them in. So you guys should know how to do this. If you don't, we need to set session, and I'm just going to set it as username and set that equal to username. So we've set our username. Remember up here we've got our session start. Our session username equals username, so we've set that session there, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say header location, and we're going to locate to main.php, and underneath we're just going to exit. So this script is completely done now. The login.php script is done. The main file I'm going to do in the next part of the tutorial, but for now what I'm just going to do is write success in here. Obviously anyone can access this main.php at the moment, but we're just going to be testing out this script and see if it works now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come straight back to there, so all the post data is gone. I'm going to type my username, and I'm going to type a wrong password. So I've just scribbled a load of rubbish in there, and I'm going to click login. Okay, so we've got incorrect password. I know this is really silly. I'm just going to add a paragraph break there. Okay, so I've got an incorrect password that's been submitted. Now what if I do the correct password? My password is PHP Academy, so I've typed that in. I'm going to click login, and we've been redirected. Now presumably now that means that we have successfully checked the username and password via the registered users on our phpBB forum. So essentially what we've done already is we've done exactly what we wanted to do in the first place, and we have successfully checked a user that's registered inside our forum, and we've used that externally. So in the next part of the tutorial I'm just going to be going through and just touching everything up and finishing it off. It's not necessary you do watch this. If you know where you're going from here, then feel free to carry on, but if you want to create the whole sort of little package, then you know, have a look at part 2. So I'll see you then. Bye bye.